The Unsolved Murder of Sonia Varaschin. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel from Nickel Investigations, and this is the next episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Today, we're going to take a closer look at one of Ontario's most perplexing cold cases, the murder of Sonia Varaschin. It's been over a decade since the shocking murder of Sonia Varaschin, a case that shook the town of Orangeville, Ontario, and remains unsolved to this day. The 42-year-old nurse was brutally murdered in the summer of 2010, and despite extensive police work and multiple public appeals, her killer remains unidentified. This is a story filled with heartbreak, confusion, and questions that have yet to be answered. Explore the unsolved mysteries of Canada with our captivating true crime podcast, Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. As we piece together the evidence and follow the trail of clues, we invite you to become a part of our mission to solve these perplexing cases. New episodes available every Sunday. Sonia Varaschin was born in Ontario and lived a life filled with love for her family and passion for her work. A registered nurse, Sonia worked at a pharmaceutical company in the town of Orangeville, where she was known for her professionalism, dedication, and caring demeanor. Her colleagues described her as someone who deeply cared for the well-being of others, and her patients often noted how compassionate she was. Sonia's work was more than just a job, it was a calling, and it showed in the relationships she built with her colleagues and the people she helped every day. Outside of her career, Sonia led an active, health-conscious lifestyle. She enjoyed hiking, biking, and spending time outdoors, making the most of the natural beauty that surrounded her in Ontario. Sonia was often seen walking her dog or enjoying peaceful moments in nature, reflecting a calmness and vibrancy that made her a joy to be around. Her friends described her as kind-hearted and easygoing, someone who was always willing to lend a helping hand and bring positivity to those around her. Family was incredibly important to Sonia. She kept close ties with her parents, siblings, and extended family. They were a central part of her life, and she made time to be present at family gatherings, holidays, and everyday moments. Sonia's love for her family was reciprocated. They deeply admired her strength, independence, and warmth. At the age of 42, Sonia was living on her own in a townhouse in Orangeville, where she enjoyed the quiet comforts of her life. She was known for being responsible and reliable, and her loved ones could always count on her to check in regularly. At the time of her death, she was not married and had no children, but she had experienced relationships that her friends said were positive and filled with mutual respect. Sonia's life was characterized by her deep empathy, her zest for life, and the strong connections she maintained with friends and family. But on August 30th, 2010, Sonia's life was tragically cut short. The murder. On that day, Sonia failed to show up for work. Her employer became concerned and contacted her family, who also hadn't heard from her. Later that day, a disturbing discovery was made. Sonia's blood-stained car, a white Toyota Corolla, was found abandoned in an alleyway in downtown Orangeville, just a short distance from her home. Police quickly responded, and what they found at Sonia's townhouse only deepened their concerns. There were clear signs of violence. Blood was found throughout the house, leading investigators to believe she had been attacked there. The scene suggested a struggle had taken place, and it became evident that Sonia had likely been murdered. But where was Sonia's body? For 6 agonizing days, family, friends, and the local community hoped for answers. But on September 5th, their worst fears were confirmed. Sonia's remains were discovered in a remote wooded area in the town of Caledon, about 13 kilometers from her home. Police investigation began in full force. The Ontario Provincial Police quickly established a task force and a forensic examination of both her home and the scene where her body was found was conducted. They gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, and appealed to the public for any information that might lead to the identification of Sonia's killer. But despite these efforts, the case has remained unsolved for over a decade. So what happened to Sonia Varaschin? Let's break down the details. Up next, the investigation. The investigation. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. The investigation into the murder of Sonia Varaschin began immediately after the discovery of her bloodstained car on August 30th, 2010. When Sonia failed to show up for work that day, it raised alarm bells for her employer and family. Soon after, police located her white Toyota Corolla abandoned in an alleyway in downtown Orangeville, a short distance from her home. The car's interior was stained with blood, leading investigators to suspect foul play. The crime scene and forensic evidence. When police entered Sonia's townhouse, they found clear signs of a violent struggle. Blood was discovered throughout the home, particularly in the bedroom and on the stairs. This suggested that Sonia had been attacked in her home and likely sustained severe injuries before being moved. It's believed the killer transported Sonia's body using her own car, disposing of her remains in a secluded area in Caledon, approximately 13 kilometers from her residence. On September 5, 2010, Sonia's body was discovered by a person walking their dog on Beach Grove Side Road, a few hundred meters beyond a bend along the dirt road east of St. Andrews Road in Caledon. Police will recover the bloodstained beige or cream-colored bedding missing from Sonia's home. It was believed the killer was wearing a men's size 10 or 11 Dakota or Wind River brand work boot, sold exclusively at Mark's Work Warehouse. Members of the OPP's Behavioral Science Unit, the same branch that helped catch serial murderer Colonel Russell Williams, prepared a profile for a male suspect. It suggested the killer may have displayed, in quotes, out of the ordinary or unusual behavior to family, friends, and relatives in the days following Sonia's death. Profile indicated the killer may have increased use of drugs or alcohol, might have unexplained absences from school or work. Police also said the suspect may have moved from the area or limited social interactions to avoid detection. Investigators believe the crime was both brutal and methodical. They were left with frustratingly few clues. DNA evidence was collected from the scene, but it did not immediately match any profiles in Canada's national DNA database, limiting their ability to zero in on a suspect. Key points. The key points of this case are chilling. Investigators believe that Sonia was attacked in her own home, possibly while she was asleep or just getting ready for bed. The amount of blood found in her townhouse suggests a violent and brutal assault. The killer then placed her body in the trunk of her car, drove it to a secluded area, and disposed of it. The fact that the killer was able to do all of this without being seen raises serious questions. Was this someone who knew Sonia? Someone familiar with her routine or her home? Could it have been a random attack, or was this a targeted killing? Police have publicly stated that they believe the perpetrator may have known Sonia or at least had some familiarity with her. However, there's been no solid evidence pointing to a specific suspect, and DNA evidence gathered from the scene hasn't led to any arrests. DNA evidence and the elusive suspect. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. One of the most frustrating aspects of this case is that DNA evidence was found at the crime scene. Investigators have made it clear that they collected DNA from both Sonia's home and her car, and they are confident that this DNA belongs to the killer. Yet despite this crucial piece of evidence, no match has ever been found in the National DNA database. For many years, police have made public appeals for anyone who recognized the composite profile of the killer based on this DNA evidence. In 2018, they even used a technology called DNA phenotyping, which creates a facial composite of the suspect based on their genetic markers. This was a significant step forward, as it gave the public a sense of what the killer might look like. According to the phenotype, the suspect is male, likely of European ancestry, with light-colored eyes. But here's the perplexing part. Despite this advanced technology and multiple public appeals, the suspect has never been identified. How can this person still be at large when we have their DNA? Investigators believe the killer may not be in the national database, suggesting they may not have a prior criminal record, or they could be someone who has managed to evade detection over the years. Could the suspect be someone who lives a quiet, unsuspecting life? Someone who has never come under police radar, or perhaps someone who left the country after the murder? These are all questions that continue to haunt investigators and the community. Theories. In the immediate aftermath of Sonia Varaschin's murder, police began looking closely at those closest to her, as is typical in homicide investigations. Sonia's friends, family, and former romantic partners were interviewed extensively to determine if anyone in her personal life could be a potential suspect. Was this a crime of passion, or was Sonia the victim of a calculated attack by someone she knew? Let's look at the key angles. Ex-boyfriends and personal relationships. One of the first avenues police explored was Sonia's romantic history. Investigators naturally looked into any current or former relationships to see if jealousy, resentment, or unresolved conflict could have been a motive for murder. Sonia had been in relationships in the past, but there was no clear evidence to suggest that any of her ex-partners had the motive or opportunity to commit such a brutal crime. Former boyfriends were interviewed, but none of these leads produced a concrete suspect. By all accounts, Sonia had ended her relationships on amicable terms, and no one from her romantic past appeared to be involved in any suspicious behavior leading up to her death. That said, the nature of Sonia's murder, occurring in the privacy of her home, with no sign of forced entry, led many to speculate that her killer could have been someone she knew well. If that's the case, why haven't police been able to definitively link any of her former partners to the crime? Did the killer know Sonia? One theory that persists is that the killer may have known Sonia in some capacity, but not as intimately as close friends or family. Perhaps they were an acquaintance, someone who interacted with her occasionally or knew her through her work. This would explain why Sonia might have let them into her home without suspecting any danger, and why the killer seemed comfortable navigating her home during the attack. The level of violence in this case also suggests that the killer may have had a deep personal rage towards Sonia. Whether this anger stemmed from rejection, obsession, or some other motive is unclear, but investigators believe that whoever did this was likely fueled by strong emotions. The boyfriend angle. Sonia had been dating someone in the months leading up to her death, and the police were particularly interested in learning more about this relationship. In any murder case, romantic partners or ex-partners are often considered early on, as crimes of passion can sometimes stem from relationship disputes, jealousy, or intense emotions. Was Sonia's boyfriend involved? Was her relationship volatile, or had something gone wrong in the days before the murder? Public speculation and rumors. At the time of Sonia's murder, there was considerable public speculation surrounding her romantic life. In the tight-knit community of Orangeville, where rumors travel quickly, there were whispers about whether a jealous ex-partner or current boyfriend might have been responsible for the crime. However, Sonia's friends and families did not report any signs of trouble in her relationships. By all accounts, Sonia's romantic history was relatively peaceful, with no known history of domestic violence or significant conflict. Interviews and alibis. Police interviewed Sonia's boyfriend as well as her former romantic partners shortly after her body was found. The investigation sought to determine if there were any tensions or arguments that could have escalated into violence. However, despite initial suspicions, it appears investigators did not find any compelling evidence linking Sonia's boyfriend to the crime. According to reports, the individuals questioned during the investigation were able to provide solid alibis for the time of Sonia's murder. Her boyfriend, in particular, was cleared early on in the investigation. After interviewing him and examining his alibi, police did not pursue him further as a suspect. The lack of motive. One of the challenges police faced in trying to connect Sonia's murder to any of her former boyfriends or current romantic partner was a lack of a clear motive. Sonia was well liked by those around her, and there was no indication that she had been involved in any serious disputes that might have led to such a violent attack. Investigators searched for any signs of domestic issues, but no reports or allegations of abuse were uncovered. Additionally, her family did not express concerns about her boyfriend at the time, nor did they suspect any prior partners of having a role in her murder. Sonia had ended past relationships on amicable terms, and there was no known history of harassment, stalking, threats from any former partner. Why was the boyfriend ruled out? One key factor in ruling out Sonia's boyfriend as a suspect was the forensic evidence. DNA found at the crime scene, including inside Sonia's home and her car, did not match her boyfriend's profile. While police initially considered the possibility that someone close to Sonia had committed the crime, the lack of forensic evidence tying any of her boyfriends to the scene made it difficult to pursue that theory further. Moreover, the DNA evidence that was recovered from the scene is yet to match any individuals in the National DNA Database. It strongly suggests that the perpetrator may not have had a previous criminal record, or may have been someone unknown to Sonia. Police have been tight-lipped about specific suspects, but we do know that they cleared several individuals after interviewing them and reviewing their alibis. So if Sonia's murder wasn't tied to a jilted lover or someone for her immediate circle, who else could it have been? A crime of passion. While many unsolved murders often turn out to be crimes of passion committed by those close to the victim in moments of emotional intensity, the lack of evidence in Sonia's case suggests that this was not the case. The crime, although brutal, didn't fit the typical pattern of a domestic dispute escalating into violence. Investigators have pointed out that the level of planning involved, such as the killer using Sonia's car to transport her body and then abandoning it, could indicate a more calculated act rather than a spontaneous outburst of rage. Up next, the stalker or random attacker theory. The stalker or random attacker theory. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. Another possibility investigators have considered is that Sonia may have been targeted by someone she didn't know, perhaps a stalker, or even a stranger who had been watching her. Sonia lived alone in a townhouse in a quiet part of Orangeville, and some experts believe her killer may have known her routine, watching and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. It's possible that this person entered her home without her knowledge, caught her by surprise, and attacked. The stalker theory is chilling, but it's not entirely implausible. Orangeville is a small, relatively safe town, which may have made someone like Sonia feel secure in her own home. But the brutality of the attack and the subsequent disposal of her body suggests a level of planning that would be consistent with a predator who had been observing her. Despite this, there has been little concrete evidence to support the theory that Sonia was being stalked. Police have not publicly identified anyone who might have been following her, and no witnesses have come forward to suggest that Sonia was being watched by a suspicious figure in the days or weeks leading up to her death. Other considerations. There were some aspects of the case that are seldom reported that I believe are significant. Sonia's mother said that Sonia always called at night unless she had someone over. That night she didn't call. Someone possibly there was Sonia, or was Sonia already dead or incapacitated at that point? Her mother is sure that someone was with Sonia at her house that night. An important part was that Sonia was found in her nightgown, a fancy piece of lingerie bought from a local store. Would she possibly just wear this on a regular night at home, or was she dressing up for someone? Could she have been forced to put this on? The townhouse complex where Sonia lived was a bit tricky to locate a house. Someone definitely knew the area and had very, very likely been there before. The location where Sonia's body was found was within 4.5 kilometers of where Sonia's boyfriend lived, along a route that both he and Sonia frequently drove. To this day, police refuse to discuss a murder weapon. Then there was what I consider may be the most important piece of information. In the month prior to Sonia's murder, there had been roofing contractors working on the townhouses. Sonia at some point had words with the roofers where she blamed them for breaking her patio table. So who were these roofers? Did police interview them? Considering the footprint of a work boot was found at the location where Sonia's body was located, surely they must be considered suspects. Sonia would know them and possibly let them into her house if they showed up in the early evening. Contractors will work until dark, so it isn't out of the question of someone showing up at 8 o'clock p.m. under the ruse of dropping off a check to cover the cost of the table. Could Sonia have just been trying on her nightgown when the knock of the door came, and answer will have covered up with something like a robe? Could one or more of the contractors have just forced their way into the house at that point? 2 people would make more sense to wrap up and carry a body outside, put it in the trunk of a car, remove the body, and then leave it at a site. Is this all possible? I believe it is. Up next, ongoing efforts and challenges. Ongoing efforts and challenges. This episode is brought to you by Nickel Investigations. As with many cold cases, one of the most significant challenges is the passage of time. Witnesses' memories fade, and potential new evidence becomes harder to uncover. Investigators, however, have remained vigilant, periodically revisiting the case, reviewing evidence, and using new technologies as they become available. The lack of resolution in Sonia Varaschin's case has left her family and community devastated. Investigators continue to hope that advancements in forensic technology, along with any potential new information from the public, will one day lead to a breakthrough in the case. Until then, Sonia's murder remains one of Canada's most troubling and mysterious unsolved crimes. As we wrap up this episode, we're left with a reminder that for every unsolved case, there's a family seeking closure and a community left with unanswered questions. Sonia's case may be cold. It's not forgotten. If you or anyone has any information that could help, please contact the Ontario Provincial Police. Thank you for listening to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. If you have a case you'd like us to explore or theories about Sonia Varaschin's murder, let us know on social media or through our website. Remember to subscribe for more episodes, and together, maybe we can help bring justice to those who deserve it.